Opening credits. Royal Bastard. A Billionaire Contemporary Romance. By Summer Cooper. Auto-narrated using Google technology. Prologue. Angela. 1983. I stared at my reflection in the mirror, teasing my golden feathered hair to get it to curl just right before I sprayed it with hairspray to cement it in place. I glanced at my eyes. The eyeliner was perfect for a change, as was the blush. I smiled a secret smile because I had a secret. A secret that would change my life forever, and it wasn't just the man in my life. He was a part of it, of course, the man who I only knew as Eddie, but it was more what we had created that made happiness sparkle in my eyes. My hand went to my still flat stomach. Our baby. Tears pricked my eyes for the 100th time that day. I hadn't been able to stop the tears of absolute joy from filling my eyes all day. Every time I thought about the baby, it happened. I knew Eddie would be happy too. We talked so many times about having a family and a future together. I knew he would be pleased. I went to the record player on a stand beside my bed and turned off the latest Stevie Nicks album. One song in particular spoke to my heart, because I knew Eddie was a man I could always run to if I ever needed him. He was my world. I left the apartment, little more than a large room with a private bathroom, and walked briskly down the city street to the park where we were supposed to meet. I couldn't turn off the million-watt smile on my face or make my heart stop skipping with happiness. My lover might be a mystery, tangled up in a million secrets, but I didn't let that bother me. I'd wondered why I couldn't know his last name, or if he was married, but he talked all of those worries away. He'd love them away, I thought, as I felt my cheeks begin to burn. Every question had been answered with a
censored
and an assurance that all was well and would be revealed soon. I was new to the area, as I'd grown up in the country with an elderly great-aunt. My mother had been a prostitute and died when I was 3, drugs taking her away from me long before her death. My father could have been any of the men that paid tribute to her daily. I didn't know what it was like to have a mother and father, or to know the security of that kind of home, but my aunt had done her best. She'd sent me to York City to learn my trade as a nurse now that I was 18, and I was doing well with it. I'd have to take time off from school to have the baby, I decided, as I crossed the street to the park. My heart skipped a beat again as I saw Eddie there. The fringe on my lace shawl shimmered in the sunlight as I waved at him. He looked anxious over there as I waited for a line of cars to pass. He was pacing and wore a light jacket to fight off the chill of our northern city, a suede confection of black leather. He was always dressed so handsomely, and I decided his dark scowl wasn't going to be enough to ruin my day. I ran to him after the cars passed, the thick heels of my leather boots clacking against the ground. He swung me into his arms despite his mood and held me tightly. My flower print dress swirled out around me as I hugged him back. The world became nothing but his love. I was finally going to have a family of my own, to replace the one I never had. I leaned my head onto his shoulder and absorbed him, and all of his love into my heart. Nothing could destroy the happy life we had ahead of us.
Eddie. 1983. I held the woman of dreams in my arms, the softness of her form against me, a comfort in a world blown into chaos. Angela, the angel of my dreams, had been my comfort in the darkest time of my life. My father had recently passed away, and it had torn my world into two. She'd melded it back together for me, and given me a purpose. He had been so healthy, so full of life, that I'd begun to believe he was immortal. I'd watched him take on his daily routine with awe, and wondered at his stamina. I was tired out after a night of partying with my mates, and a day of studying at university, but he could be up all night with advisors discussing policies, and then be up early the next day, and ready for more of his duties. It had all caught up with him. A heart attack took him one night, a rare night when he was allowed to get to bed before midnight. He had been my guide, not just my father, and a true friend. Without his steadying hand and guidance, I'd felt alone, miserable, and bereft. truly bereft. At 19, my world shifted, and I hit a period of rebellion. I took on the snarling persona of Billy Idol, down to the bleached white hair and black leather, and gave myself a new name. Instead of Edwin, I was Eddie, the rebel without a cause. Then I'd seen Angela at a bar, one of those my sort normally never went into because it was just far too wild for them, and taken the frightened-looking girl under my wing. She'd wandered in looking for a payphone, but the toughs inside, wild boys with even wilder hair, had started to tease her more romantic style. I'd intervened, and those innocent, wounded brown eyes had drawn me in ever since. I'd promised her the world, marriage, and a family, all she'd ever wanted from me, thinking my father would never die. I would never be king of Eboracum, and I'd be allowed to marry the girl I wanted to, so I'd planned for the life of a prince. It had surprised me that she didn't know who I was, but I didn't look the proper young man in a suit with dark hair that the newspapers showed anymore. I looked like so many other defiant young boys my age. It hadn't started as a game, keeping secrets. She was the only person who'd ever treated me as a normal person, and I hadn't wanted that to change. I'd fallen for her from the first, but I hadn't wanted her to know who I was, not until I knew for sure I wanted her as my bride. So many wanted the title, the name, the power. I knew it was far too risky to reveal the truth to her. As far as she knew, I was just another student, poor as all the rest and struggling to make ends meet. That's how I'd sold myself to her, and that's how I'd wanted to keep it. Now my father was gone, my coronation was quickly approaching the horizon, and I'd just been informed that my secret romance I thought I'd been carrying on wasn't so secret. The ministers knew about it, and they were not happy. I inhaled the scent of her hair as I held her close, her shampoo and hairspray mingling into a pleasant scent. This was our last moment together. I'd come to tell her it had to end. She looked so happy, her cheeks were flushed and her eyes had some new kind of light in it. A light that said she had a secret, and I'd have to pull it out of her. "I have something to tell you," she murmured as she pulled away, and I felt my heart clench. I could not allow her to change my mind. I had to break it off. "I have something to tell you as well, Angela. Come with me, let's sit on the bench, shall we?" I hoped that the public place would restrain her tears and keep her calm. I know, rather heartless of me. I did not want to face her heartbreak, and I wanted to get this over with. Fast and easy, get the pain over with, and move on. I hadn't counted on how much it would hurt to see her in pain, and just the thought of it made me cringe in guilt. I had to do it though. I'd been born to be a king, raised to be one, and now I had to do my duty. My upbringing had been privileged. I'd been given a gift by the accident of my birth, and now it was time to pay back those who supported my family with their loyalty. I had to give back to my country, and to do that, I had to give up Angela. I guided her to the bench and pulled her close to me one last time. "I have to stop seeing you, Angela. I'm not who you think I am." I'd rehearsed the lines 1,000 times since the sun broke over the horizon this morning. Say the words, get it over with. The look of confusion on her face before tears filled her eyes nearly broke my will. "I am Prince Edwin of Eboracum, and soon to be the king. From what the ministers have learned, your mother was a prostitute and your father unknown. You will not be allowed to be queen, and I owe a debt to this country. A debt that means I have to give you up. I wish you all the best in your journey through life." She was speechless. I was a coward. I disentangled her hand from mine, stood up and made to walk away. Her response destroyed me. "I love you, Eddie." No place for me to stay, no demands for proof of who I was, just a final gut-wrenching stab of acceptance of her own fate. I couldn't turn back and look at her, and my heart pounded in my
censored.
As my brain said I had to turn around, I had to make her pain stop. "I can't be with you. I'm sorry." I spoke without inflection, and had to fight to control the bland expression on my face. The muscles wanted to contract, to grimace into a wince of pain and heartbreak, but I could not allow it. I was meant to be king. I walked away and left her in that park. I left her and my child, and strode into my own future without her. I truly was a coward, no matter how brave it might seem to give up your own happiness to rule a kingdom. It would have been far braver to give all of that up for the happiness only Angela had ever given me. Henry. Present day. I looked up as the car slowed. Marcus shouldn't be slowing down through this section of the city. The park caught my eye, a sprawling expanse of green grass and trees spread out into the rolling hills in the distance. People were jogging, sitting on benches, or were sprawled out on blankets looking up at the cloudless sky. This was the place where my father had nearly destroyed my mother. There, under that oak tree with so many hearts and initials carved into it, was the place where my father had walked away from my mother and left her before she could even tell him about my existence. I stared at it coldly with gray eyes the same as his, remembering the pain that always filled my mother's voice when she mentioned the park or that tree. The memory was burned into her brain, and though she'd overcome my father's desertion, she still felt the pain of it. She'd gone back to her small town to have me, but moved back a few weeks after my birth. She'd written to my father to inform him he had a son, and she'd received a cordial, if informal notice that a contract would soon arrive. She and I would be cared for monetarily if she never told a soul who my real father was. I would be allowed to know who my father was. He might even wish to see me occasionally, but we were never to reveal the truth. I'd never actually met my father over the years. I'd never spoken to him or had a letter from him, but I knew who he was, who I was. He'd given us up to be king, nothing else had mattered to Edwin. My mother had been unsuitable for him, I had been a stain on his past, and we were never publicly acknowledged. Now my father wanted to change that. He'd gone on to marry a proper young noblewoman and created a son with her, but times had changed and apparently so had Edwin. He wanted to acknowledge me now. He wanted me to take his place as king. I didn't want anything to do with it. He'd provided for me and my mother, and I had used every bit of money for my education. I was now an attorney with my own firm. I'd worked hard and used the intelligence both my parents had given me to build a very successful business. My goal back then had been to provide for my mother and to make her proud. My father had never entered into the equation. I didn't care about being a prince or a king. I had my own life and my mother to care for. Even with my father's money, she'd struggled as a single parent, and I lived every day to make her life better. She was still young enough to have her own life, but I still had a very special relationship with her and did my best to give her all the love my father didn't. Sorry, sir, there's an accident ahead. It should be cleared momentarily. The voice of my driver, Marcus, came from the front of the luxury sedan. No worries, Marcus. My meeting isn't for another half hour. There's no need to rush. I shot the cuffs of my white cotton shirt, straightened my tie, and brushed the memories into the past by smoothing a hand through my hair. I was meeting a young woman today, a trainee in a program I'd helped to design for those in need in the city. She was newly divorced and had been having a very hard time of it. She was in the city's welfare system because she'd been hospitalized with depression and had been put into our program to help her get back to living a full life. I picked up the file beside me and looked at the cover. A stunningly beautiful blonde-haired and green-eyed woman stared back from a picture stapled to the cover. Her eyes had captivated me from the very first moment I saw her picture. Not because of how beautiful she was, but because of how much those eyes reminded me of my mother's. There was a familiar hurt there, a pain that ran deep. There was also strength and defiance, and I knew she'd be a good candidate. She wouldn't let the world destroy her, just as my mother hadn't. I was looking forward to meeting her.
Chapter 1. Evie. Present day. Why are people so rude? I grumbled to myself. Yet another tall man in a business suit pushed by me, and almost spilled my coffee in the process. I was barely over 5.5 feet tall, maybe that was it, I wondered. My shoulders hunched as I tried to make myself less of a target for others who didn't mind shoving people as long as they made progress. I sighed and looked around for the building I needed. I was familiar with the city, but not the address, and I didn't want to be late. Today was the first day of my new life. A life where I was in charge and in control. I smoothed back a stray wisp of blonde hair, knowing the silky tresses would have escaped the French twist before I made it through the day. It was a style suggested by the makeover artist, provided by the program. It gives every woman an air of sophistication and mystery, my dear. Just use more hairspray. That had been the advice the older woman had given me, before she patted me on the head and moved on to the next trainee, while I did as instructed and sprayed more hairspray on my unruly hair. There were 6 of us in the first batch of the Second Chance program. 4 women and 2 men, all with different stories to tell, but all with hopes for a better future. We'd been given a budget for new work attire, new hairstyles, and for transportation to and from work. Rather than using my transportation fare for the bus or a taxi, I decided to save it and walk to work. I decided that was a silly idea about halfway there. The nude-colored heels I wore might make my calves look fantastic, but they pinched my toes, and I knew 8 hours and another walk back to my tiny apartment would see the shoes in the back of my closet, never to be taken out again. I could always wear my trainers to walk in and replace them before I went into the building, but I knew it was far more likely I'd dig out my old comfortable loafers and wear those instead. I'd wanted to present an air of professionalism, a complete and utter lie, but I was going to work in a law firm as a trainee to one of the paralegals there. The program aimed to introduce us to jobs our aptitude tests showed we'd be most proficient in. If we found we liked the work, we'd be given proper training. Obviously, some of that would require a university education, but the program would pay for all of it. This was my first day and my first job. Ever. I felt nervous, and my foot skidded along the pavement as my ankles weakened at the thought. My palms began to sweat, and my heart skipped around, which made it hard to breathe. This wasn't the life I was supposed to have, this wasn't how it was all supposed to end. I had to stop between 2 glass-fronted buildings to catch my breath and escape the pressing crowd of thousands of people on their way to their own jobs. Anxiety made my stomach flutter and I felt nauseous. I steadied myself against a wall and let my head fall. Breathe in, breathe out. I repeated the mantra in my mind, and when I felt calm again, I brought to mind my little girls. Violet and Dahlia. My twin little flowers. My world. Smiling blue eyes and blonde hair, with chubby little cheeks that they hated. At 6, they were still too young to be concerned with looks, but everybody wanted to pinch their identical cheeks, and they hated it. I hadn't seen them since the final custody hearing 3 months ago, but I knew exactly how they looked. Aaron, my ex-husband, had to send me a picture of them every day, as part of the legal ruling, and I brought the latest picture up on my phone as I leaned back against the wall. I didn't care if the black suit, second-hand but almost brand new, became stained or wrinkled. If I didn't get myself calm, I'd never be able to face the rest of the day, and if I didn't make it to the first day, I'd be out of the program. I needed this opportunity if I wanted to get my girls back. I needed it if I wanted to spend even a small amount of time with them in visitation. I didn't even have that right now, but it was my first goal. I tried not to think about Aaron, to let anger dictate the course of my thoughts, but it was him and his new wife who had turned my world upside down. We'd married 7 years ago, but we'd been together since I was 17. He'd been the golden-haired, 6-foot-tall, and handsome as sin college boy, the older man all of my high school friends had envied me for having when he'd come to pick me up from school. I'd been his girl and he'd been all I wanted from the world. I'd been timid, impressionable, awed by his status. I couldn't help but roll my eyes at my own stupidity. I'd allowed him to be the one in charge, to make decisions for me. The first time I'd slept with him, I was 18. He'd said, "I love you," and I'd allowed him to do as he wanted without a protest. I hadn't protested when he didn't wear a condom. He was older, he knew best, right? He loved me, he wouldn't get me pregnant and leave me. And he hadn't left me, that is. He'd got me pregnant, and I'd barely been able to finish high school, before I was a married woman with 2 infants to care for. Aaron hadn't left me though, I'd been right about that part. Well, for a while anyway. I'd been spent 6 years as the merry if somewhat bored housewife, washing his clothes, raising his kids, and supplying the once weekly demand for
censored
before he left me one shocker of a night. He'd come home from his security guard job, a job he'd taken when I'd revealed my pregnancy, and told me he didn't want to be my husband anymore and that I had to leave because his girlfriend was on her way over. I'd stared at him, stunned, mortified, and hurt, but he wouldn't look me in the eye. What do you mean you want me to leave? What girlfriend? I'm your wife, you don't get to have a girlfriend. Normally, I wouldn't have given him that much protest, but I'd been shocked. His father had disowned him when he'd quit college and given up his dream of being a doctor to marry me instead. There'd been no money to help us, no cushion for us to rely on, and his relationship was still strained with his father. I'd given Aaron my subservience the moment he married me. I'd been his dutiful little wife, out of guilt. I'd done whatever he asked or told me to do, and that night had been the first time I actually stood up for myself, even if it was to only ask a question. Get your shit and get out? Why is that so hard to understand, Evie? He growled the words at me, but he still hadn't looked at me with those blue eyes that I'd adored for years. I think you need to be the one who leaves, Aaron. The girls have just gone to sleep. I can't wake them up now and drag them off into the night just because you want to bring your— I can't believe I'm even saying this— girlfriend over here. We have nowhere to go. Anger had started to build, as it all became clear. He wasn't just being
censored,
and this wasn't a joke. He was serious. Who said anything about taking the girls with you? I said get your shit and get out. Not the girls. He'd finally looked at me, and the coldness and hatred in his eyes had made me step back. But they're my girls. I tried to protest, but his forceful steps had made me crawl back to the wall of our kitchen. A kitchen I'd spent hours decorating and cared for with love and pride. Now I sought the walls out as a refuge from Aaron's rage. They're mine, and soon they'll be Tracis. They'll forget about you, they're young enough. Now get the F out of my house. Or I'll throw you out. He'd been so close, so angry, that his spit freckled my face as he spoke. He didn't hit me, but I'd cringed. He'd never hit me, he didn't have to hit a wife who was so obedient, but for the first time I feared he might. I wanted to ask him if he was crazy. I wanted to demand he get out and leave us all in peace, but that look on his face frightened me. Maybe I could reason with him? I don't have any money. That was true. I'd never worked a single day of my life since we'd married, and I had no one that could give me any. I had absolutely nowhere to go. Aaron, I can't believe this, baby. Where did this come from? Who is Tracy? Baby, we can work this out, surely? I'd pleaded with him. I'd tried to touch his face, to remind him that I was his sweet little Evie, but he pushed away with a look of disgust. I was desperate, and my husband had just turned my world upside down. One minute we were living a boring but comfortable life, the next I could see violence and hate on his face. He clenched his hands as he took a step back towards me, and I darted away from the wall and headed into the living room. I grabbed up my purse, my cell phone, and ran for the door as he'd stalked into the room behind me, his fists clenching and unclenching as he stared me down, his face twisted with hate. What had I done to deserve this? Tears broke from my eyes as I stared back at the man I'd loved all my adult life. I'd been everything he'd demanded of me, but none of it had been good enough. Aaron? I tried to make one last protest, but he bellowed in rage and put his fist through the sheetrock of the wall. Our wedding photo clattered to the floor. I'd run for the door and out of it before he could say anything more. I scrambled from the tiny little house and out into the city streets. I didn't really have anywhere to go. It was only then that the reality of my life over the last few years crystallized. There was no one I could call. Not just because I didn't have their numbers anymore, but because Aaron had designed everything that way. I glanced back at the house to see him stood in the doorway. My entire life was in that house. Him, our daughters, my hopes for the future, it was all in that house. Where was I supposed to go? The girls had never been to a birthday party with other children, or had one, they'd never been to slumber parties, and we didn't go out to visit friends or family. Aaron had worked to alienate all my old friends, and even my parents from our circle. I'd felt so much guilt over the girls that I'd allowed him to do it. I made my way through the darkness of the dimly lit streets, afraid to stay out of the light but ashamed that I'd just been kicked out of my home, so I clung to the darkness. I was probably in shock too, otherwise I might have seen the sense in seeking out a shelter. Instead, I spent that first cold night huddled on a bench in the park before I'd become too overwhelmed to stay there. The old oak tree with all its carved initials and declarations of eternal love taunted me with their promise, the same promise Aaron had made to me. When a homeless man came and declared I was on his bench, I got up and left. I wished I'd brought my coat, I can remember that part now. I'd found a restroom door unlocked in the park's bathroom facilities, and huddled in there until the morning came, and I could finally hear the world come back to life. I'd stared, still in shock, as cars rushed by, all with a destination in mind. I had no idea where to go. Aaron had always been too proud to let me sign up for welfare, even during our leanest times, so I had no idea how to get that, or where to even go. I had no clue what to do. I dug around in my purse and found $15, and decided I needed coffee. I'd found a diner that sold coffee for $1 and went in. I wanted more than the single cup, but I didn't know how long the money I had would have to last me. I had a debit card for Aaron's bank, but would I be able to withdraw anything? I wondered, before I said no to that idea. I had to think about the girls. They might need something. "Honey, do you need some help?" The waitress that had brought me my coffee came back now and looked down at me with compassion. Not pity or derision, just compassion. I think I might, actually. The diner was still empty then, and I was glad of it because a tear streaked down my cheek before I could stop it. I have no idea what to do. She'd helped me, given me directions to a shelter, and had even come to check on me there once her shift ended. I'd made it through that first day, then that first week, and now, a divorce and a year later, I was on the verge of something even better. I'd had a nervous breakdown, I can't deny that. I'd been in a hospital for a little while. Aaron and his girlfriend had driven me to it, but I was getting on with life now. I stood up from the wall, brushed off the back of my clothes, and took a deep breath. That was the past. My future was one more building away. I straightened out my clothes, wiggled my feet in my shoes, and headed out once again. I'd managed to push down my anxiety, and maybe it was just brazen stupidity, but I made myself walk. I wanted to see Violet and Dahlia again. I wanted to hold my girls again, and this job would make that happen, I just knew it would. Before I knew it, I was in the building and talking to a woman named Alana. She'd introduced herself to me the minute I stepped off the elevator on the 12th floor, and taken me to an employee break room to discuss my paperwork and to sign papers. I wasn't going to be a full employee of the firm, but I still had paperwork to fill out. I'd watched Alana as she talked me through each set of papers, and the kind way she looked at me without condescension, the way her brown eyes would light up when I said something she thought was funny. I'd forgotten I could be funny while I was married to Aaron, and it was a trait that had emerged as the days had worn on. My sense of humor made it easy to diffuse tense situations, or to change the subject when I finally reconnected with my parents, and they found it uncomfortable when I tried to let them know I hadn't meant to become so distant. My parents were never overly emotional, and my displays of affection had always been discouraged, but I felt I owed them some kind of explanation. My humor got me through what basically amounted to their rejection. When anger at them, at their callousness, made me want to scream and demand to know why they'd stopped asking to see their own daughter, I'd turned it into humor. This woman, this Alana, looked like she might be a friend if I took the chance. She was pretty, with lovely almond-shaped dark eyes and darker skin, but it was the gentle tone of her voice that put me at ease. Now, Henry can be scary to some people, the more timid personality, she warned me as we walked to his office for a formal introduction. She'd paused outside the door and looked back at me, her gloss lips arched in a smile. Don't let him know you're afraid, or he might just eat you alive. She wiggled her brows at me, and I had to smother a laugh. Yeah, we would get along just fine. I've heard about this guy. I've brought my douchebag away. I held up my middle finger, but scratched at my eyebrow with it to poorly hide what I meant. I'm nobody's fool anymore. I read your file. I had to as part of our decision process. I just want to say, Evie, you're one strong woman. She looked down at her red-painted nails and bit at her lips before she looked up again. I really admire you and your courage. Thanks? I felt tears prick at my eyes and had to fight to push them down. Great, you make me cry right before I meet the Dragon King. I waved at my eyes, and we both laughed before we took a breath to calm down. Ready? I looked at her with a gleam in my eye, ready to face the world. Until I saw his face, and got a glimpse of just how gorgeous he was, that is. My jaw dropped as the most gorgeous man I've ever seen brought his light gray eyes up to look at me. Maybe I wasn't ready after all. I glanced over at Alana long enough to see her try to hide a smirk before I took control of myself and walked in with my hand held out in a professional way. Hi, I'm Evie, your trainee from Second Chance. That's how I wanted it to go, anyway. What really happened was, I went to step into the room, said hi, and immediately caught a loose piece of carpet with the heel of my shoe before I fell down to the floor as hard as I could. I swear I bounced. I was so embarrassed, all I could do was lie there as I heard Alana cry out my name and blink as a pair of designer black leather shoes appeared before my eyes. I just smashed my face into the carpet and groaned in mortification. Could I just die now?
Chapter 2. Henry. I watched my new employee fall to the floor in one of the most traumatic entrances I've ever seen in my life. She fell to the floor so hard I was afraid she'd hurt herself, and I rushed out of my chair to get to her. Let me help you up. I tried to take her hand to help her roll over, but I noticed her shoulders shaking. She was crying. What do I do with a woman in tears? I felt panicked as I reached out and patted at her shoulder. The only woman I've ever seen cry was my mother, and I couldn't pick this woman up and hug as I brushed away her tears. I could get sued or something. I heard a bubble of sound come from the place where her mouth was crushed into the carpet. There was probably lipstick on the carpet, but I didn't care because when she rolled over I could see that it was laughter that made her shake. I felt my own eyes crinkle at the corners as I looked down at this stranger I only knew from a picture and a file. Her green eyes danced while she looked up at me. I guess I've made the entrance of the year, haven't I? Let's say that entry might have made the front page of Time if anyone had been lucky enough to capture a photo. I couldn't help the chuckle my sentence ended on. Now that I could see she wasn't hurt too badly, and definitely not crying, I felt the humor in the situation. Her own self-deprecation made that easier, and honestly, something about her just put me at ease. She sat up and pushed away the hair that had fallen around her face. Hi, I'm Evie. I'll be your trainee for the day. May I inspect your floor for you? Her smile was engaging, and the way her cheeks turned slightly pink caught my attention. I knew she had to be embarrassed, but she was braving it out. I had to admire that. I'm Henry, great to meet you. May I help you up? I held out a hand to her, and to my surprise she actually took it. Are you all right? Alana asked, her hands on Evie's shoulders. I don't think my pride will stand much more, but I'm okay physically. Evie turned her amazing smile to Alana with gratitude. I'm glad you're not hurt. Alana gave her a smile. Let me go get some ice for your knee. It looks a little bruised. Oh, don't worry about that. She looked down at her knee, and I could see her face blanch when she saw just how bruised it was. It did look painful. No worries, it won't take a minute. Alana disappeared, and I turned back to Evie. Now that we have the introductions out of the way, how about we get you a cup of coffee and a chair to rest in? She took a deep breath and let it out slowly before she turned back to me, her smile crooked to the right. That sounds like a really good idea. She let go of my hand, and immediately I missed the soft feel of her small palm in mine. Down boy, I thought to myself. She's not been here an hour, and you're already infatuated. I was a professional. It didn't matter that I'd never been infatuated before, ever. I could handle this. I shied away from the ideas swirling in my head and focused on the matter at hand. Or tried to. I guided her to the chair, my hand only slightly brushed at the small of her back to make sure she didn't fall, as she hobbled on her injured knee. I went to the cart and prepared coffee for all of us, including one for Alana when she came back. She'd been with me a long time, so I knew how she liked it. Now then, how do you take your coffee, Evie? Cream only, please. Her cheeks were redder now, I saw, and turned back to the coffee to give her a moment to recover in private. Just how I like mine. Other than your fall, how are you today? How do you feel about being in a new job? Other than clumsy, you mean? She looked around the office. I could see her in the mirror over the cart, before she settled into the chair and rearranged her clothes. I'm excited to be here. And we're excited to have you. You'll be following Alana and myself around for the first few days, and then we'll start giving you tasks. Nothing too major or confidential because I do have to consider my clients, but you're here to learn, and we will teach you. I'm really grateful for the opportunity. And the coffee. She smiled politely as I handed her a ceramic cup and went behind my desk. I could see the city behind her, through the glass panes of the wall that made up the exterior of the building. Inside there were 2 standard black office chairs for people to sit in, my large black glass desk, dark gray carpeting, and 2 black and white landscape photos of the city decorated the walls. The room was sterile to most, but it kept my brain calm and cool for the heavy workload I carried. My instincts told me the spunky little blonde was brave, and she proved me right when she looked me in the face without fear. I'm ready for whatever my duties are. I'm eager to learn and look forward to my time here. She would only be with us for 3 months, only enough time to get the basic idea of what a paralegal's duties were before she would be shipped off to a new assignment. I could see the intelligence in her eyes and knew she'd be good at this job if she wanted to continue with it. She also had a hardened outer shell, and that was definitely needed in this line of work. Great. Did Alana go over your paperwork with you? Alana was my paralegal, but my personal assistant was out on maternity leave, and Alana had agreed to fill in for her instead of us hiring someone new. Yes, everything's been signed and copied, thank you. She twitched the bag in her lap, and I knew she must have her own copies in there. Very good. Now, you won't be exposed to anything confidential regarding clients, but you will be asked to do some research, maybe even type up some briefs or subpoenas, and maybe even make travel arrangements. The possibilities are endless, but we'll keep them simple at first. Can you type? I knew what her file said, but I wanted to know what her answer was. Typing was key to this job. I have to be honest with you, Henry. I've never had a job, not since I graduated high school. I did learn to type there, but I'm a little rusty. I think with practice I'll improve a lot. That's fine. Alana can give you some pointers on that if you want them. I could have sat there and looked at her all day. She really did take my breath away, but I had a case to attend to later that afternoon, and I needed to prepare for it. Right, Alana should be back soon. I want to tell you one more thing. She'd started to stand up but eased back down in the chair. Her face looked solemn, and her eyes had widened as she did so. There is a lot of confidential information here, and there's even more that's written in jargon you're not going to comprehend. You'll need proper training before most of it makes any kind of sense to you, so don't get overwhelmed, all right? Just do what you can, stretch your limits, but don't let it get to you, okay? Right? I'll try my best, I promise you that. Thank you so much, really, for this opportunity. I'm so very grateful. I could see how grateful she was when tears filled those pretty green eyes of hers. That broke my heart. I'd read the personal notes of her advisor, and they were right. Evie was a sensitive but strong woman who'd been through hell. I didn't know her exact story personally, but I could see in the way her shoulders sagged for a moment that she carried a huge burden. As the main designer of this program, I knew quite a lot about Evie and the other candidates, but I'd never bring up anything sensitive with any of them. I was thorough in my vetting process, but I wasn't callous. I'd never say anything to any of the clients of the program that might embarrass them or put them on the wrong track, especially on their first day. You'll do fine, Evie. Really, you will. Here's Alana. I looked up as the door opened, and Alana came in with an ice pack. I knew we had to have some of these around here somewhere. I finally found them in the first aid kit in the break room. Here, this is cold now, Evie. Why don't we go to my desk, and you can have a few minutes to let this work, all right? Alana guided her out of my office, but she turned at the last minute, her smile already back in place. I know you had a lot to do with this program, Henry, and I just want to say you are a good man. She walked away and her words left me stunned. I'd never expected or wanted gratitude. I just wanted to give people a chance who deserved one. I set my jaw and shuffled through papers as a new emotion welled in my
Censored.
I think it was pride, but I wasn't sure. Evie was going to be a delight, but she might just be trouble too. It was a chance I was more than willing to take.
Chapter 3. Evie. Hey, I'm going to that new Thai place when we finish today. Do you want to go with me? Alana broke my concentration, and I looked away from the brief I was typing up. I can't. I started to brush the invitation aside, but then realized how much money I'd put into the bank over the last month. I hadn't realized this job would benefit me in that way, not that much anyway, and decided to treat myself. You know what? That sounds nice, actually. Thanks. My decision didn't have anything to do with our boss, or the hope that he might go to dinner with Alana, as he sometimes did. I really had found a new confidence in myself since starting this job, and it came from more than just the fact I had money in my bank account. I'd learned new skills, Alana and I had become friends, and men looked at me with interest. Overall, every day showed me more of just what I could accomplish. Great. We should be done by 5. I'll make a reservation for 5:30. Alana moved on with a happy bounce in her step. It was the first time I had accepted one of her dinner invitations. Currently unattached and with no children of her own, she spent a lot of her evenings by herself. I'd invited her to dinner at my apartment, a complex provided by the government for those in need, and she'd been gracious enough to accept. I still found it difficult to cook for one person when I'd spent so many years cooking for 4, and I often made far too much, even when I tried to only make enough for one. I'd also gone for dinner in her much nicer apartment. We never talked about Henry or about other people from work, just our daily lives, the television shows we liked, and what our hopes were for the future. She knew I wanted to get custody of my daughters back, and fully supported me. I knew she wanted to go back to school to be a chef, but she thought it was a silly idea and less lucrative than the job she had now. I thought it would also be a more physically demanding choice, but like her, I liked the idea of cooking for a living. When I cooked, I felt at peace and the world made sense. Lately, I'd had little that gave me peace. Until now, that is. I went back to my task, and tried not to think about the handsome man who'd made it all possible. Henry was very handsome, and he had the most provocative eyes. He also made me feel at ease when he was around, and often made me laugh when he wiggled his eyebrows or made a joke. He knew my situation, and didn't judge me as many people had. My life had never been simple, and I was still saving money to afford an attorney to fight Aaron. Henry never treated me with disrespect, or in a way that would demean me. He was just inquisitive, attentive and kind. I was developing a rather serious crush on him, but it was my secret, and one I never planned to divulge to anybody. Just the thought of my crush on him was enough to make my cheeks hot. In many ways, I still thought of myself as Aaron's wife, and the thought of having a crush on another man seemed wrong. He was single, and I was legally unattached, so there really was no reason to be embarrassed or ashamed, but I'd had such steamy dreams about him that I lived in a permanent state of embarrassment around him. When you've dreamed about having a man's head between your thighs, it can be very hard to look him in the eyes afterwards. Since the day I met him, I'd had these kinds of dreams about him. Henry was very different compared to my ex-husband. Where Aaron was tall and starting to put on weight, Henry was lean and muscular. Henry was a year or two older than Aaron, but he was in much better shape and far more handsome. It probably was not fair to compare the two, but Aaron had always been less concerned about appearances and more concerned about keeping his family at home. He hadn't even wanted the girls to attend public school, but I'd insisted. He'd always wanted control, and our past ensured that I gave it to him. Even after he'd left me and installed his new girlfriend in our house, he tried to control me. He abused his position as my husband, before our divorce was finalized, to have me involuntarily committed and kept me there so I missed the court dates for the custody hearings. I'd suffered with depression and anxiety after he'd kicked me out, but it was nothing that should have warranted institutionalization. When I was released, a court-appointed attorney helped me to obtain the final divorce, but it tormented me that I wasn't allowed to see my daughters and that I hadn't been allowed the chance to explain why I hadn't been at the hearings. I really wanted my daughters back, but I also knew I needed to take time for myself. For now, I allowed my mind the small indulgence of a fantasy or two about my boss. He was definitely worthy of any woman's fantasy. My treatment after I was released had left me with little confidence, although I had little to begin with. A month after I started here at Henry's firm, my confidence had started to soar. "Evie, do you have that brief ready yet?" The man who filled my thoughts lately now stood behind me while he waited for an answer. I was in the office I shared with Alana, just in front of his, and turned in the office chair to look at him. "Yeah, it's ready." "And so am I wanted to add, but held my
censored.
My eyes fell down to my knees and my cheeks became even hotter, so I stared at his shoes. "Has it printed?" His sensual voice drew my eyes up once more to his face, and our eyes locked together. His were smiling, mine probably looked terrified. The way he made me feel like a woman without inhibitions was kind of scary, but he made me feel alive too, even without trying. The fact his gaze met mine was something that always made me feel good. "Evie?" His smile was indulgent while he waited for my answer. I barely stopped myself from the eye roll at my own stupidity, but I think I saved myself when I turned back to the laptop in front of me and sent the file to the printer. "It's just printing now." "Thanks so much. How are you doing today?" His question made me turn back around. "I'm good, just a little tired, my dreams kept waking me up." I gave a bland smile, one I hoped wouldn't invite questions because I really hadn't meant to admit that. "Oh? Bad dreams?" He looked concerned and shifted forward, his brows knitted together. Did he want to save me from my bad dreams, I wondered? Not really, just disturbing. I wanted to turn back to the screen, but I faced him instead. "Maybe some nice music would soothe you while you're asleep?" Why did he look as though he'd winced just then? "I've heard that music is good for sleep." His cheeks turned a little pink, and my head tilted to the side a fraction. Was he blushing? Why would he blush? Right, I need to look this over. "See you later, Evie." "Thanks so much, you're doing a fantastic job." I knew Henry was a very serious man most of the time, and that he was very driven by his career and his philanthropic endeavors, but he'd only mentioned something that could help me sleep. Surely his morals weren't so rigid that even chat about a thing like the best way to sleep would make him blush? Had he pictured me in bed? I tapped at my chin as I turned back to my desk. I'd started to come out of my shell a little thanks to Alana, and I knew people today were much more open about
censored.
But Aaron had kept me locked away for so long, he'd even blocked certain television channels on our cable package, so it was all new to me. Alana was very open about her
Censored.
life or lack of, and she taught me quite a lot about the world I'd been hidden from for so long. I think he has the hots for you, Evie. I heard Alana's voice as she came to our mutual desk, really just a long table with some drawers on one end. No, he doesn't. I protested immediately. Girl, get real. I've seen how he looks at you. He can barely take his eyes off you when you're in the room. She gave me a look that said she knew what she was talking about, and I needed to pay attention. He doesn't look at me. I let my hair fall around my face to hide the way her words made my heart race. He can't stop looking, you mean? She opened her laptop and started to type in her password. If I was you, I'd go for it. But he's my boss. I gave the rather tepid reply. So what? She paused to think. Well, I suppose with you being in that program it could cause problems, but it would be worth it. Henry would be worth it. He needs a good woman, and you are one of the finest. Both physically and mentally. She looked at me directly, without any sign of a taunt or a tease. Wow. Do you really think so? I couldn't believe it, but if she said so, then maybe. I know so. I've been here a lot longer than you. He's interested. She gave me a cute little smirk before she opened her email to check what kind of hate mail might have come her way while she was gone. Lawyers aren't always the most loved people in the world, and she delighted in calling the angry emails people sometimes sent to Henry hate mail. I'd be terrified to open anything like that, but I guess you grew a thick skin after a while. The rest of the day went by in a blur of typing, making copies, printing files, and arranging everything into the correct folders. I didn't even have time to think about how much of my life I'd wasted trying to apologize to Aaron for getting pregnant. I was too busy, running from room to room, and before I knew it, Alana was pulling her bag from one of the desk drawers and turning to me. Hey, look, I want to go home a little early and change. I'm sick of these slacks cutting into my waist, and I plan on eating tonight, so I need something else to wear. Will you be okay for the last meeting with Henry tonight? She wouldn't meet my eyes, so I kind of suspected she had made this decision on purpose. What meeting? I didn't know anything about a meeting. He just needs one of us to go over his agenda for that speech he's giving at that charity event. You just have to listen, tell him if something doesn't make sense, and then you're done. It shouldn't take more than 20 minutes. She gave me a wink of a twinkling brown eye before she headed out of the door without another word. She had decided to go home early on purpose. This was an attempt to set me up with Henry. Alana. I called out to her, but she only waved as the elevator doors closed. Shit. I looked around as the word pulsed in my brain. Aaron hadn't allowed me to swear, it wasn't ladylike, but that had never stopped me from thinking of them in times of stress, and this was one of those times. What was I supposed to do now? What I always did in these situations, I finally decided. Don't give up. I squared my shoulders and waited for Henry to buzz me on the office line or come out to get me. I didn't have anything else to do, and honestly, I was just too nervous. What if I did something stupid, like threw myself at him like some kind of desperate harpy? I would be so ashamed. I knew it wouldn't happen. Hey, Evie? What are you doing here? Henry finally came out of his office and looked me over without a hint of indecency in his gaze. He was just doing that automatic check he did with everybody. Alana had to go home to change before we go to dinner, so she left me to go over everything with you. Oh. All right. Come in then, please. He moved back into his office and sat down behind the desk before I could even get into the room. I was aware of him as a man. I could smell his aftershave, feel his presence, and knew this was a bad idea. I opened the file with his speech and handed it to him. I'd spent the afternoon doing a quick edit and knew it was polished to perfection. He read over it and then looked at me. This is perfect, there's no need to go over it any more than this. Why don't you head on out since you're going out with Alana? Oh, if that's all right with you. I was already out of my chair, and he followed behind me. Yeah, it's no problem. We paused just in the doorway, and I looked up at him with a happy smile of relief. Great, I'll head on out then. Thanks so much. I don't know why I did it, but I reached up and cupped his cheek. It was something I'd done with Aaron a million times, but this was my employer. Oh, but Henry halted the apology when he moved his hand up to cover mine. Neither of us said a word, but I could see the way his eyes went dark and hooded, knew exactly what his thoughts were because his eyes were glued to my lips. He wanted to
censored
me, and I knew I wouldn't stop him. I wanted his
censored.
I wanted to feel him pressed against. God, I needed to feel a man pressed into me. It had been so long, so hard to go through life without any kind of touch or comfort. I only wanted his touch. Henry's touch and no one else's. Ahem. Yes, well, you'd better go. Henry broke the spell we'd both been under and moved away. Yeah, you're right. I scurried away, grabbed my bag and walked quickly to the elevator. I didn't look back, mainly because I knew if I did, I wouldn't be able to leave. Henry had been the one to pull away, so obviously he had far more sense than I did. If only, I thought as I rode the elevator down. If only.
Chapter 4. Henry. I watched Evie go with a heavy heart. Her touch had been so natural and unforced. It was a touch of appreciation and thanks, but I wanted it to be more. Over the last month we'd worked together, I'd found her to be kind and sweet and devastatingly beautiful. I let her go tonight, but I'm not sure how much longer I would be able to control my
censored
for her. She was all that was sweet and innocent in the world, and I knew a woman like her would not know anything about the kind of
censored
I wanted to have with her. I knew she'd been married, and that she had children, but there was such an innocence about her, it drew me to her. The fact that you could be married and still be the innocent was amazing to me, but I knew it could happen. I'd never been in love, and I'd never had a long-term relationship. Most of my liaisons have been with women with the same kind of goals as me. Women who knew how to suck a man's
censored
and enjoy it. Not prostitutes, just women who wanted
censored
and then wanted the man to get out as fast as he wanted to leave. The kind of women that didn't want entanglements and declarations of romance and love, just a quick F and then to get back on with their lives. Evie was not that kind of a woman. We were both busy doing our jobs, and for most of the day it wasn't hard to ignore her presence in the office. There were 2 instances when it had proved very hard to control myself. The first was when she's near me. When I was in the same room with her, I wanted to pull her to me and taste her lips. I would stop if she protested, but something about the way those innocent eyes of hers gazed at me told me she wouldn't protest. It was those eyes that led me to problem number 2. She plagued me in my dreams. They were just the normal
censored
dream, but they lasted for hours on end and left me sweaty and tangled in my sheets. I was helpless in these dreams, helpless to say no, and I could not get enough of her. She did things in those dreams, things those innocent little green eyes of hers would never dream of doing. I wanted her to do them so freaking bad. I clenched my hand and walked away from the door. I'd really needed to go over that speech. The event was only 2 hours away, but I couldn't stand to sit there and not touch her. I'd sent her home to save her from me. I'd tried my best to not touch her. She was too good for a man like me, for a man with so many demons. But how I wanted her. I kept up a mantra, 3 months. In 3 months you can her silly, you can make her beg to have your
censored.
But for now, just let her do her job and move on to the next one. Part of it was the fact I was her boss, and one of the main contributors to the program. I could just see the headlines and videos that would appear on the giant screen in the city center. I didn't need to draw that kind of attention to myself, so I kept up the mantra, a mantra that proved very hard to maintain. Those 2 words, 3 months, were repeated over and over in my brain, and they soon lost their power. When it came to Evie, my normal stone-cold persona was blown out of the water. There was also the fact I was not my father. I might be his son, but I was not him. I wouldn't string a woman along, only to abandon her when a better option came along. My father had left my mother for a kingdom, which was a huge opportunity, I'll admit, but still. He'd never even spoken to me. I was 35 now, and in all those years my father had never spoken to me once. I've spent my entire life in an attempt to atone for another man's sins. I would not create even more heartache to put out into the world. It just wasn't going to happen. Not if I could help it anyway. As I settled into my chair, I considered the dilemma for the millionth time. Evie was the kind of woman you married. The kind you taught all of the naughty things to while encouraging her to fly, but still the kind of woman you married. I couldn't promise her that, not because of who I was, but because I was afraid of making that promise only to break it. I wasn't known for faithfulness or my romantic qualities. I didn't think I could offer either of those things to a woman. No, my past had broken something inside of me. Something I was afraid would never be fixed. As sweet and nurturing as she was, I doubted Evie could fix it. I swore as I reached into my desk drawer and pulled out a bottle of whiskey. I needed to calm down. I had to get through the rest of the evening. Alana is an evil, malicious cow, and when she comes back to work, I plan to tell her exactly that. How could she call in sick when she knew I had to spend the entire day preparing to go to trial with a client? She knew that meant Evie would be with me all day. I'd seen the way Alana had looked at us both over the last couple of days. There was speculation in her gaze, and if there was one thing Alana could not resist, it was playing matchmaker. She'd put couples together throughout our building, and now she was trying to do it with me. I paced in the office gulping like a man drowning, and F me if I wasn't. I was drowning in panic. How could Alana do this to me? I got through the rest of the day, and before I knew it, Evie knocked at my door. "Hi, Henry, are you ready for me?" The woman of my dreams stood in the doorway peeking from behind the open door. "Yes, I'm ready." No, I wasn't ready. I'm not an animal, but I am also not stupid. Being alone with Evie was not a good idea. I could only hope she could control herself better than me. She came into the office and settled in the chair in front of me. She had on a navy blue pantsuit today that suited her shape well. It suited her so well I had to look away. I shuffled through the papers on my desk and then turned to my laptop. We did have work to do, so I made myself act like the grown-up that I was and got down to business. I'll need printed copies of those last 2 files, and I have to sign one of them. I'm sending them to the printer now. Evie tucked a lock of blonde hair behind her ear as she typed. The sun was on its way down, and slanted through the window in the office to highlight the features of her face. I wondered if she knew how beautiful she was. It wasn't just that she was beautiful, though she really was a spectacular woman. I think what fascinated me the most about Evie was how I felt around her. I felt protective, like I was the champion she needed. In between the
censored
and the need to touch her was the need to protect her. I knew her backstory, and I had the utmost respect for her. Many would have given up in her situation, but she just kept pushing forward. I stood as she left the room, and walked over to the glass wall. The sun was setting, and it was a gorgeous evening outside. I watched people go past, my mind on where they were headed, what was in the bags they carried, on anything but the woman that would soon walk back into the office. She'd gone to collect the printouts, but she'd be back soon enough. 3 months, I told myself. 3 months and you can
censored
her until you both die from suffocation, but you have to wait 3 months. Hey, here's the prince. What has your attention? She smiled and came to stand next to me. Oh, I'm just watching the people going by. Keeps me occupied. I stuffed my hands into my pockets so I wouldn't reach for her. I wanted to. I wanted to so much. Anything interesting happening? She came up right beside me and put her head close to mine to look out. Now, why had she done that? All I'd have to do was turn my head and... I didn't think about it. I was past temptation and straight into the land of need by the time our lips met. She'd looked up naturally as I moved my head, and our lips fused together. Her lips were soft, silky, and so damn sweet. I found my left hand was buried in her hair before I even had time to think about it, and we'd turned to face each other.
This scene has been censored to provide a safe and enjoyable reading experience for everyone.
Chapter 5. Evie.
This scene has been censored to provide a safe and enjoyable reading experience for everyone.
Chapter 6. Evie. I went home like it was any other normal night, and didn't wobble even once as I walked back to my empty apartment. That reminded me of my girls, and what I might jeopardize with this fling with Henry. He'd been sweet after he'd let me down from the window. He'd pulled me into a chair and held me. He'd wanted to hold me and stroke my hair. I wanted to wait to do that, Evie, but I couldn't stop myself. It's fine, I wanted it too. I'd assured him, and
censored
his jaw. We'll just have to be careful. If you want to continue, that is. Of course I do. I can't get enough of you. You're right though, we'll have to keep it secret until you're out of the office and in another assignment at least. It is what it is. I'm not looking for promises, Henry. I've had enough of those to last me a lifetime. I didn't want broken promises is what I meant. I know, Evie. I won't make any either, not until I know I can keep them. All right. I didn't know what else to say then, and I still don't know. We'd put our clothes back on, he'd
censored
offered me a ride home, and I'd refused. I always walked home from work every day. Somebody would notice the first time I didn't. Now I was here alone. I should probably shower, but I didn't want to erase his scent from my skin. I felt a moan swell in my throat as I thought about how his scent had got on me, but then I remembered my girls. I haven't seen them in so long. Violet and Dahlia, my little flowers. I had pictures of them every day, but Aaron and his new wife had made attempts to make them forget me. I knew they called the other woman Mom, and I never got notes or calls from them. Somehow, Aaron had managed to turn the courts against me, and I'd been able to do little about it. In Yorick, a country ruled by a king, things could be odd. I'd heard other places didn't allow things like this to happen, but I lived here, and I had to deal with the consequences. I'd find the right lawyer when I had the money, and I'd take my girls back. Aaron and his new wife could just F right off. I kicked off my shoes happily and went into my tiny bathroom. A toilet, a sink, and a shower were all crammed into a room I could barely turn around in. The room began to fill with steam once I turned on the tap, and I slowly took off my clothes. I knew I'd be sore tomorrow. I wasn't that inexperienced, so I took my time. I wanted a long, hot shower, even if it would wash away Henry's scent. I stood under the hot spray and let my thoughts drift. If Aaron found out about Henry, he might get angry. He might use the relationship as a way to fight against me. I was an adult, and for all the antiquity of our court system, our society was liberal. Nobody would hold it against me that I'd found a new relationship, surely? I had mounds of shampoo in my hair when that thought struck. Would the court see it as a frivolous, carefree lifestyle? Would they call me loose or immoral? My blood ran cold, then I remembered something. Henry was an attorney, a defense attorney, but still an attorney. Though our relationship was new, I knew I would only have to say a word to him and he'd find a way to help. I'd only do that as a last resort. I didn't want him because of what he was, after all. I wanted him because of the way he made me laugh, because of the seriousness of his face when he was dictating notes for me to type. He made my heart melt in so many ways, and now that I knew how
censored
could be with him, he made my body
censored
too. I knew I shouldn't compare the two, but after so many years of catering to Aaron, it was nice, really nice, to have a man who wanted me to be wild and free. Over the next few weeks, Henry encouraged that wild streak. He bought me lace lingerie that to wear under my second-hand suits. He delighted in taking down my hair to run his fingers through it, and he taught me to say no. If I didn't want something, if I didn't want to do it, or if I didn't like it, Henry told me he knew because I'd stop moving. He didn't like it, and encouraged me to say no. He wanted only to please me, and in turn I wanted to please him. This wasn't the same as the subservience I gave to Aaron, not at all. This was mutual satisfaction, and I might even say a form of love. He built my confidence, and I boosted his. He flirted with me, and I'd flash him a hint of lace-topped stocking beneath my skirt when nobody was around. It was playful, it was fun, and I didn't want it to end. "You know you're keeping me sane, right?" I said to him one evening, after a rather energetic session on the new couch he'd had brought to the office. "Only as sane as you're keeping me, Evie." He was behind me, our bodies spooned together, and his lips grazed my shoulders sensually as he spoke. "You know Alana suspects, don't you?" It was a change of subject, but it was one we needed to talk about. I cast an amused glance at the couch, one similar to the smirk Alana had given me when the couch was delivered earlier that day. I hadn't said a word and she hadn't asked, but we both knew what that couch was for. Henry and I had wasted little time before we were on it. "I hate this hiding. I really want to take you out, to take you to dinner, to the functions I have to go to alone," he answered, interrupting my thoughts. "Maybe once my placement changes. Or after I get my girls back." That worry continued to plague me. My time with Henry after work usually was a time of release for me. A time where I could relax and be a human being that hadn't seen life kick her too many times. The reality was that had happened, and the pleasure and peace he gave me could cost me far more. I couldn't give him up, though. I couldn't make myself stop. I needed him to keep me whole. I hadn't known just how much I needed him, but now that I did, I wasn't willing to throw that away. Even if we continued this dalliance as nothing more than an office romance, I needed it. I wasn't greedy. I didn't necessarily want my cake and to eat it too. I just wanted some peace in the storm that was my life. Henry gave me it. "What if I promise nothing bad will happen?" His words broke into my thoughts, and I sat up to look at him. I turned to him and I knew that my face had that "Are you crazy?" look on it. Just to make sure, I asked him, "Are you crazy? We can't be seen together. If my ex finds out about us, he can use it against me. You should know that better than me." We had talked about my hopes to get my daughters back, and I hadn't asked for his help, but he did say he would be able to help me if and when I needed it. "Evie, the only thing I'm really worried about is the fact that you're my employee. I don't want to mess up your place on this program. You are the kind of person it was designed for. As for your ex, we can always handle the problem. I want to meet your girls and spend time with them. I want to see what you're like as a mother." He brushed my hair from my face and stroked my cheek. "Don't worry about him. I'm not going to leave you to deal with him alone anymore." What he was really asking was for me to stay the night with him.
Censored.
In his office was one thing.
Censored.
At his house was completely different. It meant I'd sleep in his arms, and that I'd wake up next to him. I wasn't sure I was ready for that. I liked to go home after work, after him, and go to sleep in the quiet of my bedroom alone. That was one of the best things I discovered when Aaron kicked me out. I really loved to sleep by myself. There was nobody to steal the covers, or to stop the way I spread out. There was just an entire bed all for me. "Evie?" His head tilted slightly to the left, and I knew I had to give him an answer. He offered me an entire night of passion, and the joy of waking up next to him. I couldn't turn that down. The more I thought about it, the more I wanted it. I let out a deep sigh and agreed with a nod. "Does that mean you will go back to my place with me?" The look on his face was expectation mixed with excitement. "If you promise no one will know, I would love to go home with you." I wasn't sure where this would go. I wasn't sure from the beginning, but I wanted to see it through. I knew it was time to have a discussion, that one day we'd be able to have a relationship. I knew this wasn't just a fling, but I was happy to treat it as such. I hadn't planned any of this and didn't know what to expect, but I knew it was time to really talk about it. He stood up, and we put our clothes on to head out. My brain was a mess of confusion, uncertainty, and worry. I knew I wanted my girls more than anything, even more than I wanted Henry, but I wanted him too. Did I want more than?
Censored.
Of course I did, but right now,
Censored.
was good enough. I wasn't sure it was a good idea, and my nerves were strung tight as the elevator dinged and carried us down to the private parking area where his car waited. Why hadn't I just gone home? I admonished myself as he held the elevator door open for me.
Chapter 7. Henry. Evie was beautiful, sexy, and everything I hadn't known I'd wanted in my life. Companion, I mused, as I drove us through the darkness of the city. We laughed together, made love together, and she could hold her own on very deep conversations in a variety of topics without batting an eye. I knew she thought she wasn't very smart, but she really was. That was another part of her attraction, smart, beautiful, and sexy as F. She also knew how to make me smile. She liked to hide away from the world, and I knew she'd been happy to be a homemaker and a wife, but now she could fly. I wanted to see her come out of her shell, a little more. I knew she had her worries mainly about her children, and that there was a lot at stake for her, but she needed to live too. She needed good experiences to outweigh the many bad ones she'd had. I pulled into the parking area of my building without a word. She was so nervous, I knew she wouldn't want to chat. She didn't have to worry too much. My building was all about privacy. The parking garage was a private area, and I knew there wasn't a soul to see us. I guided her to the elevator, and I could feel how tense she was when my palm rested at the small of her back. I'd soon have her at ease as I prepared a meal for both of us. I just wanted to have her in my arms for one night, a normal night for a new couple that included dinner and wine, both of which I had in my apartment. The apartment was mine, part of the arrangement with my father, although I hadn't wanted to take it. It was a penthouse apartment but decorated to my tastes, which didn't necessarily suit the cold appearance of the exterior. I preferred natural woods and warm colors of bronze and gold. All the cold glass and steel clashed with my taste, but it was home. The door opened to my apartment, and I guided her in, and saw her expression was surprised. I think she expected something like my office, a place that spoke of wealth and power. This was my home though, and here I relaxed. Houseplants thrived near windows and on tables, and a few trees grew in pots on the wide patio outside of the living room doors. I needed quiet and the things that soothed me when I came home from work, so I'd turned it into my haven. Now Evie was going to be a part of that haven. I'd had plans when I finished law school. Plans to travel the world, plans to see the lights in Paris and the Milky Way in the darkest part of an Arizona desert, but that part hadn't happened yet. I hoped to share those experiences with Evie one day. Perhaps we could take her daughters with us. Thoughts scurried through my head as she wandered through the apartment to take it all in. "It's really a nice place, Henry. I really like it," she said as she came back in from the bedroom down the hall and to the right. It wasn't large, apartments usually weren't in the city, but it was enough for me. "Thanks. I still think I'd be happier in a cottage in the country, but it's mine." I didn't explain, hadn't ever explained anything about my father, and didn't plan to. I never saw him and didn't want to, so I'd learned to forget about him a long time ago. Sometimes a letter would pop up, a notification about something, but most of the time I didn't even read those. He wasn't a part of my life, and I didn't want him to be after so long. "Shall we order food?" she asked, her hands hidden in the arms of her jacket. I'd learned she preferred sleeves that covered her hands because they kept her fingers warm. I thought she still liked to hide. I didn't try to change her clothing choices, she'd change them if she wanted to, and as it was I liked the quirks of her taste. She really had changed my world. I'd gone from a confirmed bachelor to a man who now considered the future with a partner. We now only had about 5 more weeks before she would be in a new placement, and the future was on my mind. In such a short time she'd become vital to me. I wasn't surprised when I remembered how much she'd affected me in the beginning. Evie had been a firecracker that hadn't been lit yet when she walked into my office. I'm happy it was me that set her off. Her ex might have tried to, but he hadn't succeeded. I know she had a lot of worries and wanted to get her children back, but I planned to help her with it, and I knew we can win. I'm going to make dinner for us, my dear, I said in answer to her question. I'd stood there like an idiot until her face changed, concerned, but it cleared when I headed towards the kitchen. I don't eat out if I can help it. I prefer to know what I'm about to eat. That sounds very obsessive of you. I heard the teasing note in her voice and took the comment for what it was. You never know. I've read about what restaurant employees do to food when their customers tick them off. I can't imagine doing any of that. It's horrible. She settled on one of the bar stools around an island in the kitchen, as I went to the fridge and took out a few items to make a mushroom Alfredo. I doubt it really happens. I just like to know that the ingredients are fresh, more than anything. I hate all of this processed food we eat now. I always cooked for the girls. Her voice went far away, to memories of times long gone now. You will again. I've already got an attorney in mind, and he'll shred that ex of yours. I told you not to worry. I gave her a chiding look before I went to the sink to wash the mushrooms and prepare the rest of the ingredients. That's really kind of you, Henry. I'm grateful, but you don't have to do that. I've been saving. I know you have, but I want to be sure you get what you want, Evie, and you want your girls back. I'm not saying your choice or your actions wouldn't do that, but I know without a doubt that my guy can get you what you want. Why would you take that chance? I paused in my preparations to look up at her. I guess you're right. I knew she didn't like to admit defeat, but I knew this was right. I'd rather know I could get them back than be terrified I might not. Exactly. So let me deal with the fees and the arrangements, and you do what you need to do, which is focus on the next step in your program. Find a career that makes you happy, gives you the time you need to spend with your daughters, and me too. I gave her a wink, and she started to relax at last. You're so funny, she protested, but I knew she was happy. I opened a bottle of wine and gave a glass to her while the sauce and pasta cooked, and we chatted about the plans she had for the coming weekend. You could always go to the country with me, I offered, leaving it open at the end. I'd love to, but I have a meeting to go to with my program guide. She said it quickly, as though she was relieved to have an excuse. She was still frightened about our relationship then. I couldn't blame her, but I think I'd be in more trouble than her. I sipped at my own wine and plated up the food. I clicked on some music, an artist she'd suggested I should listen to and found I liked. We are in silence, both lost in our own thoughts. We cleaned up after and went into the living room. We watched movies, a couple of comedies, and snuggled together until her eyes grew heavy and she put her head in my lap. It reminded me of how she'd sounded when I effed her over my desk earlier that evening. The way she'd gasped was stuck in my memory, and my fingers traced her lips. Her eyes fluttered open, but I closed the delicate lids.
This scene has been censored to provide a safe and enjoyable reading experience for everyone.
Chapter 8. Evie. Evie, I need to see you, please. Henry's quiet voice broke into my concentration as I worked my way through a pile of appointments that needed to be changed. I looked up and saw we were alone and gave him a sexy grin. Sure, Henry. What do you need? I followed him into the office and closed the door behind me. My eyes went to the couch before they flicked back to him with an arched brow. Not that, well, no, I always need that, but that's not why I wanted to talk to you. I've got the ball rolling with an attorney, and he wants to talk to you. He was behind his desk now, not in front of it, so he wanted to keep some distance between us. Oh? It's only been a day since we talked about it. My mind was in a million places at once. Where were my files? What might the lawyer want to know? Would I have to appear in court? I know, but I didn't see much point in putting it off. Is that a problem? He looked confused, and I couldn't blame him. I was confused at my hesitation. I guess I've worried about it for so long now that I'm afraid I'll lose. It's scary, you know? This might be the only chance I have to get Violet and Dahlia back. I sank into a chair, dizziness making my head light. I'll pay you back, of course. As I told you, no you won't. As for the case, she assures me you have a very tight case. You'll get visitation rights at the very least. I've also done a little digging on your ex. He's not a very nice man, is he? No, he isn't. The words were spoken absently. I had something else on my mind. Look, Henry, I appreciated this, but I don't want to be your mistress, your kept woman. That's not what this is about. You giving me gifts, doing this, it kind of feels like you think that about me. His face was stunned, and I knew he hadn't seen it that way at all. That's not it at all, Evie. I don't think that, no? I'd never treat a woman like that. It feels as if you are, though. I let the words trail off. He'd been the one that taught me to argue my case, to never back down, and I wasn't going to now. I've told you about my mother, right? About how my dad just abandoned her? I wouldn't do that to another woman. He got up from his chair and came around to hunch down in front of me. He didn't stand over me or stare at me with condescension from his desk. He came down to my level. I know that and about your history, I said. But I can't help feeling like this isn't right. I've asked to be put into a new position too. I dropped that bomb on him suddenly, though I hadn't meant to. It felt like the right time to tell him, so I did. What? He leaned a little closer, as if he hadn't heard correctly. It's not fair to you. Our relationship puts you in too much danger of having to face an ethics hearing. I can't do that to you. He stared at me for a minute before he answered. I have to say, Evie, it won't be the same without your smiling face here. It's not just the
censored.
You're a wonder. The way you handle your work and brighten up the place. And yes, I'm certain our relationship breaches some kind of ethics law. Perhaps it's for the best if we do get you another assignment. I sighed a breath of relief. He didn't want to argue over that point. Good. Now, about this relationship. I needed a straight answer on what we were building here. I wanted my girls back, and I wanted him to be a part of my life, but if he only wanted a woman to keep his bed warm, well, then I needed to change my plans for the future. Where do you want this to go, Henry? Is this a relationship? Are we dating? Or is that just a fling, and you'll find someone new the minute I'm gone? I realized that sounded desperate and petty, so I carried on before he could interrupt. If that's all you want, then that's fine, I'm good with that. I'd like you to be a part of my life, and my girls' lives once I can see them again. I'd seen how he was with kids. He always treated the children of his clients with a smile, and he wasn't irritated or cowed by them. I knew Violet and Dahlia would love him. I waited for his answer as he settled down into the floor. He looked down at his well-groomed nails and sighed. This is the first time I've ever said this to a woman who wasn't my mother, Evie, so take that on board, all right? He looked up at me, his eyes full of some emotion I could not name. Was it fear? I think I'm in love with you. I've never felt it like this need, this longing, this whatever the hell it is. I want to see you, to be with you, to laugh with you. Tears pricked at my eyes suddenly, and I swiped at them. What? I don't know if it's love, Evie, but I think it is. I'm certain it is. I want things with you. A life, a future. I've never thought about those things, not for myself. He stopped the flow of words and looked at his nails again. I'd even like to have kids with you one day, if you'd want more. Wow. Henry. I was speechless. I had not come here in the hope that I'd snag myself a new husband, but Henry had just offered more than a husband, he'd offered a partner. Let's take it one day at a time, shall we? Oh, of course. Damn, I don't blame you if you want to run away and not look back now. He laughed at himself, and I leaned down to take his hand. What you've said sounds wonderful, Henry. I just need time, that's all. Somehow our roles had reversed. Wasn't I supposed to be the one declaring my undying love and begging him not to run? It's been a long time for me, and I like how things are right now. I understand, Evie. I do. He looked worried, so I went down to the floor with him. I didn't want him to think I wasn't interested. I just wanted him to slow his roll, so to speak. Henry, I'm just as excited about all of this as you are. I hated to use it as an excuse, but it was the truth. I've just been through a lot. I want to be careful and take my time. You taught me to ask for what I want, and this is what I want. You, in a relationship that has time to grow. You might not want me once you've seen me in mom mode, you know? I think you'd be an angel at it, Evie. He grinned at me, but then gave me a wink. I know it isn't easy for you, and I'm glad you know what you want. I'm good with that. I am. I took another deep sigh and breathed out happily. Good. Now, about that other aspect of our relationship. What other? His words cut off
Censored.
him. Everybody should be out of the office by now, and I knew we were safe. This one, baby. This one that I can't get enough of. I breathed him in as I pressed my lips to his again. God, he tasted so good. I lost myself in his touch, in the way he made the world disappear, and stopped the worry that plagued me. Later, when I was at home in my own bed, I thought about the world he'd offered me, where love ruled and mutual respect was given. I'd been alone after Aaron kicked me out of the house. The authorities had attempted to contact my parents when I was put into the hospital, but even then they'd turned their backs on me. Appearance was everything to them, and I'd shamed them once by getting pregnant before I was married. I made it worse when I needed psychiatric care. Instead of the care I needed, I was only given more abandonment. Now, Henry gave me more than I would have ever asked for. He was my lover, maybe even my boyfriend? That word seemed wrong, but lover was too intimate a word for everyday use. Boyfriend seemed juvenile, but it was the only one that fit. He was quickly becoming more of a partner. We'd opened a dialogue today, a way to communicate, and it was far more than I'd ever had with that other man who used to be in my life. I didn't even want to think his name anymore. The father of my children had been a real piece of work, and I'd allowed him to walk all over me. I could see that now. Rather than be the responsible older man I'd thought he was too immature to know he needed to use a condom. If he'd worn a condom, I wouldn't have become pregnant. We might have split up and moved on with our lives. I wouldn't have carried around that guilt of ruining his medical career that never was, and we wouldn't have had the girls. I wouldn't change that part, but I would change the part where I was such a doormat. I'd have told Aaron where he could shove his restrictions, his alienation of everybody else in my life. He'd wanted to keep me alone and guilty. That's how he managed to have a lover and a wife. I never questioned him because he was all I had, but I wouldn't make that same mistake. Henry would meet me on equal grounds or on no grounds at all. I'd gone through hell and I'd go through it again to get my girls back. No man was ever going to take them from me again. I knew if I wanted the relationship to work, that I'd have to work at it, and give him the time he needed. I had to be a mother to my children, and a friend and lover to him. I'd grown up a lot since my husband decided he'd had enough of me. I was glad he was gone and out of my life. I now had a man who wanted to give me the world, but also wanted me to reach for it. He wanted me to get it for myself, not just take what I was given. I rolled over and stuck my hand under the pillow. I sighed as my hand found the cool spot, and wished I'd gone home with Henry tonight as well. I wanted to wait until I was done at his office before I went back over there. We were both adults, but I really didn't want to jeopardize anything for him. There was also the fact I'd only started to unload my guilt over Aaron. I didn't want to put more on top of that. In the grand scheme of things, it was all easily dealt with now that Henry had hired a lawyer for me. I knew what direction we were headed in, and he knew where I stood. I didn't want to rush anything. I'd had the wedding bells once in life already. I knew what they were about. I'd moved to have a new position, and my girls would soon be where they belonged. Henry had brought me a romance I never dreamed was possible, something I believe is love, and the possibility to get my children back. He really was my Prince Charming. So why wasn't I happy? Why was I alone in my bed, chewing away at my thumbnail, when I should be over there with him? With a sigh, I kicked my feet out across the bed, and thought about how only a few short days ago I reveled in doing that. Now I was worried I'd be alone for the rest of my life. I was worried about that, because I felt as if I might push Henry away too much. I doubt anyone could blame me for my caution, but was I too cautious? Would my fears ruin the best thing that had happened to me in a long time? I'd been pushed out into a world that was not meant for me, by my parents, by Aaron, and I had gone through hell to get to where I was now. A tiny apartment, second-hand clothes, and some pride. Soon I'd have my girls back and a man who adored me. I'd succeeded where I'd been meant to fail. So why was I awake and so afraid it was all about to fall down around my ears?
Chapter 9. Henry. I stared up at the ceiling, the delicate sparkles of projected constellations keeping my brain quiet, but not for long. Evie filled my thoughts as always. I didn't want her to leave the firm. I wanted to know I'd see her every single day, whether it was in my home, hers, or at the office. I was greedy for her, and when she went to another job I'd see her less. I knew it made sense for her to go somewhere else, but I wasn't ready to let go of what we had. I was afraid she'd back out. She'd grown in the 2 months she'd been at the firm, since we'd started our relationship, but I could still see the frightened rabbit hiding behind her eyes. I'd lived my life as a solitary figure.
Censored
Was a function that I needed, but not one that moved me to emotion. Love couldn't hurt me the way it had hurt my mother, and by extension, I couldn't hurt someone who didn't love me. I was confused now. One of us could get hurt. I'd seen the love in her eyes, and it made her even more vulnerable. I'd call the program director tomorrow and have them find her somewhere nice and maybe close. I grinned at my own selfishness. I'd never felt like this about a woman before. It was new to me, and I wanted to keep her close. It wasn't about control, it was more about my own fear. Did that make me the same as her husband? I turned on some music as I pondered it, not surprised to hear Sade singing about her unordinary love. Her silky smooth voice filled my bedroom, and it reminded me how I felt about Evie. Aaron had wanted to own Evie, to make her pay for his own stupidity. He'd caught her in a trap far more than she'd trapped him, but the man was too stupid to see it. I didn't want that from Evie. I wanted her love, her devotion, and to give the same thing to her. I wanted an extraordinary love. I wanted far more from Evie than the guilty submission Aaron had extracted from her. I wanted to see her smile, I wanted her to be happy. To be nourished by our love, by my presence the way I was by hers. That was vastly different from her ex-husband. With a final twist to hit replay on the song I'd never admit to anyone I loved, I relaxed into my pillows and let my thoughts go. I could do this, I could have a real relationship. I could bring her happiness. Not make her happy, bring her happiness. She was Evie, I didn't want to make her do anything. I wanted to give. I might have to kill her new boss. I stared at her tear-stained face, and had to work hard not to leave the office to hunt down the man who'd put her in tears. What did he do exactly, Evie? I watched her, and I didn't want her to look me in the eyes for a change. I didn't want her to see the savage that lived within me reflected back. He told me, if I didn't agree to go out to dinner with him, he'd have me kicked out of the program. He said he had the power to do it, and I was just some scum that nobody cared about anyway. You know that's not true or you wouldn't be in that chair, Evie. Please don't let her look up. Please don't let her see this hate I can feel in my eyes. I know, but what can I do? I glanced away quickly as she looked up, those precious green eyes flooded and rimmed in red. I'll deal with him, Evie. That's what you can do. You can let me deal with him. I'd have him kicked out of the program in an instant, just as soon as I got Evie calm and out of the office. I didn't want her to hear any of this. Why don't you go back to my place? Run a bath, and soak in that huge tub of mine for a while. I'll stop at the grocery store on my way home, then I'll cook something nice for us. We can talk about it more if you'd like. No, I think you're right. I just want to get out of anything that looks like an office right now. I keep remembering his face. She shuddered, and I feared for my teeth as I ground my jaw to stop myself from the stupidity that filled my head. I'd pound his face at some point. Right now, I had to make sure he didn't do this to Evie again, or to anybody else in the program. In fact, I wanted to know if he'd done this with the previous trainee. You have your key, right? I'd given her the key 2 months ago, when she'd stopped work at my office and gone to this new place. I'd hated every minute of her departure, but we could be far more open about our relationship now. Yeah, I have it, baby. She came around the desk to
Censored.
me and I
Censored.
her back. Do you want me to come with you? I can make these calls later. I offered and watched her face. No, I think some time to wash it all away is just what I need. I'll be all right. He only frightened me, he didn't actually touch me. Another shudder told me he didn't have to. Travis Abrams was going to wish he'd never tried to throw his weight around with Evie. It was easy enough to break a man's face, his legs, but his life? That's what I was about to do to the man, and it was so much more pleasurable than the feel of breaking his bones. I went around the desk, held her in my arms for a moment, and brushed the red streaks on her face. The tracks from her salty tears. Oh yes, the man was about to pay dearly for these. I'll see you soon, baby. I won't be long at all, okay? I
Censored.
her cheeks and gave her a smile of reassurance. I love you, Henry. I felt my breath catch in my
Censored.
She rarely said it, and each time felt like the first time. I love you, Evie. Do you want me to call you a taxi? I couldn't stop the urge to cater to her needs. She'd been through hell today. I'll get one downstairs. Thank you. Don't do anything stupid, please. Her eyes told me she wasn't certain I'd listen to her. I would never do anything that would put our relationship in jeopardy, princess. Now go on, go take care of yourself, until I'm there to do it for you. I
Censored.
her lips softly and gently pushed her away. I waited for her to disappear behind the elevator doors, before I called out to Alan. I need you to get Tiffany Jones and Brian Williams on a conference call, Alana. Now. I looked at the chair where Evie had sat, and let the full power of my anger free. Travis was a doomed man. Alana nodded her head, as if in agreement, and picked up the phone. It only took a few minutes to get the call connected. I'd barely had time to talk to Evie between court dates, and the frequent appointments I had with clients lately. Her new job with Travis, a local steel manufacturer, had also proven demanding, and she often brought home work. I'd talked to her on the phone, and I'd seen her on video calls, but not often in person. I needed to hold her now, to smell her clean scent, to feel the wonderful soothing presence of her as I soothed away the fright that bastard gave her. I needed Evie. I sped through the conference call, informed them of the situation, and made my demands. There was no room for argument. I didn't care if they wanted an investigation. I wanted the man out of the program, and an interview performed with the last trainee. I wanted to know if she'd had the same treatment from Travis. I would not tolerate this kind of behavior from anyone acting as an employer for this program. As a financial contributor, I made my demands clear up: comply or face defunding. They had to remain within the bounds of the law, but otherwise Travis was out. I drove to the supermarket, found the ingredients for her favorite meal, and made my way to the apartment. She knew I was on my way, but I thought the balloons I bought at the store and her favorite ice cream would make a nice surprise. I wondered for a moment if I'd catch her in the tub, and hoped I would. She could spend hours in the hot water and steam up, happy with a book in her hands. We'd had a couple of weeks together before she went to work for Travis, and it was a happy time for us. I wanted those times back, and as much as I wanted her to find her own success in life, I knew the work placements available now would take even more time away from us. A plan had started to form in my mind, but I'd deal with that part tomorrow. I stopped the car, pulled into a parking space, and ran to the elevator. It was barely past 6 in the evening, and I knew that she was probably still in the tub. I quietly exited the elevator, and when I didn't see her, put down my purchases to head to the bathroom. I was confused when I didn't find her there and headed for my bedroom. I opened the door to the bedroom and found her asleep in my bed. I was surprised to find she was asleep. She must not have made it to the bathroom at all, as she still had on her work clothes. She had some clothes here, so I knew if she had been in the bath, she would have something different on. Sweet, tender, devoted love filled me as I slid carefully in beside of her, my clothes gone without hesitation. I pulled her gently into my arms to absorb the warm, sleepy feel of her against me, and sighed. The urge to sleep called to me, but Evie called to me more.
This scene has been censored to provide a safe and enjoyable reading experience for everyone.
Well, you're awake now. I think we should make use of that time. I pulled her back down to
Censored.
her once more. I was home now. Here with her, I was at home at last. I was at the jewelry store the next day, my eyes on engagement rings, when my phone rang and the world crashed down around me.
Chapter 10. Evie. What do you mean, you're a prince? I stared at Henry, my mind in 1,000 places at once. When I looked into his eyes, all I could see was my Henry, the man who loved me, who made me feel whole. I didn't see a prince. I didn't see a man born to wealth. I couldn't imagine. I thought the king only had the one son, Michael or whatever his name is. I have a brother, but he's younger than me. My mother was the woman he abandoned. He married Sophie before I was even born. Michael was born 2 years later. His voice was monotone, as if something inside of him had broken. So you are a bastard? The word didn't sound right to me. It was a harsh word, an ugly word that in no way described Henry. A bastard prince, yes. His hands dove into his hair and plowed blonde grooves into it. He was stressed. I could see it in the tightness around his eyes. I thought he looked to be in shock. Only yesterday he was my boyfriend, and he defended me from Travis, and this evening he was a prince and wanted to take me to the palace. I am supposed to be there in an hour. Will you go with me, Evie? I don't want to do this without you. I couldn't resist his plea and took his hand. I would go to the end of the universe with you. I think I can handle the trip to a palace. That was pure bravado, but Henry deserved all I had to give. Thank you, Evie. He
Censored.
My fingers twined with his still and stood up. There's a dress on the bed if you want to change into it. You don't have to, of course, but I thought you might want something different to meet with the king. My eyes went wide as he spoke, and I realized he was totally serious. This was not a joke. Okay. I went in to find a black velvet dress, elegant but understated, modest, yet somehow sexy with its A-frame outline. Silver buttons ran along the coat-style dress, and silver embroidered butterflies danced down the left hip to the hem at my right knee. A beautiful dress, made for royalty. I slipped into it with my mind a sudden blank, and I hoped it would kick in to remember the etiquette we were all taught at school. I followed Henry to the car, through the parking lot, and into the palace where a guard met us. Or a butler. I didn't know what he was just dressed in a black uniform that could have been a guard's or a butler's. My mind gaped at all of the riches displayed throughout the castle, but my face was blank. These were the riches of a king, the riches Henry had said he didn't want when he first told me his father had called. I'd been surprised to hear him say that. I'd been floored when he'd said who his father was. Yet here we were in a palace. A real freaking palace. This wasn't my lifestyle, I knew that much. I doubted I could even afford to live in the servants' quarters, even they looked posh in their crisp red and gold uniforms. A maid cast a glance in our direction as we passed her by, and I noted her skirt and top looked more expensive than my best suit. What was I doing here? I didn't belong here. I looked over to see Henry had his jaw clenched, and knew he was just as nervous and felt just as out of place as I did. I took his hand as we followed the guard. On the surface, he was calm and collected, but I could tell by the tenseness of his jaw and the way he breathed through his nose that he was tense. He even walked stiffly, and I knew this appointment affected him in a way that nothing else ever had. I wanted to pull him to a stop, to beg him to leave this place with me. I wanted to run away, and I could sense he felt the same way. Unfortunately, the guard stopped in front of a door and opened it before I could speak. His Majesty, King Edwin of Eboracum, will see you now. The guard clicked his heels, saluted the king, and left us to enter the vast library within. Books lined every shelf, nook, and cranny in the room. The palace dated back to medieval times, and I wondered if any of the books did as well. There were thousands of books, but I did not see the king. I'm up here, Henry. Bring the woman with you. A voice very similar to Henry's, but older, called out from above. I looked up to see a man in a pair of jeans and a black sweater standing on the floor above us. It was an open floor that only covered half of the room. The man was an older clone of Henry, and I had to wonder how I hadn't seen the resemblance before. We climbed the set of stairs to the floor above, and stopped when we stood before the king. He didn't look much like a king, I thought. He looked like Henry's father, but not very kingly. For starters, he didn't wear a crown and he didn't have a scepter. Just a tattered book in his hands. Ah, it's nice to meet you finally, son. The king looked Henry over with a critical eye, and finally stopped with a pleased grin. You look like me. I had noticed that, yes. Henry's reply was stilted, and I knew he wanted to go home. This was not easy for him, but he hadn't been able to refuse the command of the king. And this is your lady friend? Evie, I take it? He turned to me, and I was given the same perusal. Pleased to meet you. The whole thing was far too surreal, and I had to wonder if I was asleep. I started to curtsy anyway, but the king stopped me. There's no need for that. Let's sit down. He indicated an old oak table with 4 battered chairs around it. I know you must hate me, Henry, but I did what I thought was best. Things were not the same when I was with your mother. Society was changing, but we were stuck in old conventions. Your mother was the child of a prostitute, and her father wasn't known. It may have been a mistake for me to leave her in the same situation as her mother had been left in, but I thought it was the only decision I could make at the time. For an opening line, I thought it was a stunner. I could understand how it would be hard to turn down a kingdom, Henry said stiffly, after we sat down with him to my left with the king across from us. I'm sure you did what you thought was best at the time. I felt his nervousness when his leg began to bounce against mine. When I stole a glance at his face, I knew it was anger and not nervousness that made him restless. His father might be a king, which I could still not believe, but he was also the man who abandoned Henry and his mother over 35 years ago. Henry was not happy to be here. I did. The king said decisively, and with a shake of his head. I married a woman who was deemed suitable, and after I came to know her, I loved her in my own way. She knew about you, and she knew about your mother. I sucked in a breath of surprise. That must have been a shock for her, as much of a shock as it was for me to know that she knew about Henry. Henry had shown no surprise, however, and stared blankly at his father. Over the years we became very good friends, and were quite fond of each other. Sophie was quite a progressive thinker, and wanted one thing from me before she passed away 2 years ago. Edwin pushed the book across the table to Henry. The pages were open, and Edwin tapped at one line. My jaw dropped open as I read it to myself. On the rules and laws concerning the matters of succession by choice. What the hell was going on? I looked between the 2 men, and saw expectation and glee on the face of the king. Henry, on the other hand, looked as if he was about to bite his own thumb off. He had the digit between his teeth, and stared at the page as though he wanted it to catch fire. "What does this mean?" His voice was rough and sounded strangled. "It means, my son, that you will one day be king. On my death or abdication, you are the next in line." I could have fallen in the floor at that point. Queen Sophie wanted this? I told you she was progressive. She knew that by rights I should have married Angela, and that Henry should be next in line. I have researched the matter, and have come to the conclusion that I get to choose who I want to be my successor. She wanted me to acknowledge Henry, and make him the legitimate heir. We both stared at Edwin, lost for words for different reasons. Henry had just had his life changed, and by extension I had. Well. I gripped his leg beneath the table, and stared at the king in horror. If he couldn't marry Henry's mother, then that meant, as a divorced mother with a psychiatric record, I wouldn't be suitable for his son. Whatever life we'd planned to build had just crumbled. "From what my investigators have learned about you two, I expect you are thinking of marriage. I have to warn you now, my next words are not going to be easy to hear. Henry, I can offer you more money, power, and prestige than you've ever dreamed of. I would pay back all of those years of neglect with this, if it was possible. If you accept, you will be the next king." Henry had still not said a word. He sat as if he awaited the collapse of the ceiling. He was like a stone, silent and motionless. Now this is the part that might sting a bit too much. "Evie, my dear, you've had an awful life, one that I wish I'd known about. In the end, it works in my favor. You see, my dear girl, you are not suitable to be Henry's bride. He will need a bride, but it cannot be you." There it was. That knife in the heart we'd both been waiting on. "No. I don't want it." Henry had finally moved, he'd finally said something. In an explosion of movement, his chair flew back, and his voice rang through the room as he shouted out his answer. "Wait, son. Let me speak to Evie alone. Go downstairs. Just give me a moment. Please?" The man had a really bad sense of what was fair. I knew that much about him. Asking his son for a moment with me to destroy our lives further was quite cheeky. "Do not call me son." The son had just as much cheek then. Then he made it worse by an addition of more words. "I have never been your son, you were just a sperm donor." He went downstairs without a word. I made to follow him, but Edwin stopped me. "Your girls, Evie? Would you want full custody of them, by any chance? I know you've sued for visitation rights to be reinstated, but what if I offered you full custody of your girls, without an option to appeal for your husband?" I saw the calculation in his eyes, the way he watched me, and knew he wanted to see my weakness. "Then I would take my daughters, your highness. I love your son. I would give the world to have him, king or not, but my daughters are my heart and soul. Without them, I don't feel like I'm really alive. That's all I needed to know. Please go now. You'll have your papers by the end of the week. Please send Henry up. I'll have my guard drive you home. You won't be seeing Henry anymore. Thank you, Evie, you've made the right choice." I was too stunned to speak. I just traded Henry for my daughters? I blinked at him, lost, broke, but at the same time not so numb that I couldn't realize what this meant. My girls would be mine again. I just couldn't feel overly excited about that. I walked down the stairs, my head bowed, my spirit crushed. "Evie, baby, I don't want this, I want you. Please?" Henry stopped when I wouldn't raise my head. "He wants to see you now." I walked away, too broken to say anything else, even goodbye. I'd have my girls, but the price was my own happiness. And Henry's.
Chapter 11. Henry. I went to my father with anger in my heart. I didn't know what he'd said to Evie, but I didn't like it. He'd taken the woman who'd stared me down more than once, that had finally learned to stare down other men, and broken her. She'd stood up to Travis, and she hadn't broken into tears until she was in my office, but my father had broken her so badly she wouldn't even look at me. "What did you do?" I demanded an answer as I came up the stairs. "I gave her options, Henry. The same options I'm giving you now. Keep your life the way it is, and I can give it all to Michael. Or give her up and be the king when I'm gone. That's supposed to be a hard decision? I scoffed at him and turned away. Bye, Edwin. I didn't call him father, he didn't deserve it. Henry. This is a kingdom you are giving up. Are you sure she's worth it? His voice stopped me as I walked down the stairs. You gave me up for a decision you came to regret, right? I'm not you. I know what matters in this world. Then you are right, son. All that matters are those we love. I came to love the people of our land, but not as much as I loved your mother. Or Sophie, eventually. That really did stop me. What? Evie chose her daughters over you. He offered it as a rebuttal, not as anything else. As she should. That must not have been hard for her. If you do not become king, she can't have them back. His eyes were cold, calculating, and I hated him in that moment. F you. How the hell was I supposed to argue against that? I'm sorry, but I don't want you to give up this kingdom. But you just said. I know what I said. The truth of the matter is, Michael won't be suitable for the task. I need you to take his place, Henry. I will do whatever it takes. I'll even destroy Evie. My heart raged in my
censored.
I wanted to crush his skull and break him the way he'd just broken me. Then I'll do as you ask. Evie deserves her children. Are you sure? Yes, damn it all, I am sure. I will give my life, my happiness for her. Thank you, son. You are truly a better man than me. You can go to her now. He sank into his chair, exhausted. What? I said you may go to her. I had to be sure, you see. His face had sunken more now that he was done, now that he'd won. Mihal is ill and will not survive to be king. You, on the other hand, will. I'm sorry, I'm just a little bit lost here. I sat down at the table, the anger all gone, replaced with confusion. Evie may be your queen, her daughters will be made princesses, and you will one day be king, Henry. I'm sorry to have been cruel, but I had to know. I didn't want to put a man on the throne who wasn't worthy. You certainly are. I'm still lost. It will sink in soon enough. For now, go to Evie. And take this with you. He handed me a blue velvet box. Inside was a heart-shaped diamond, far bigger than it needed to be, in a gold filigree ring. It's our family's official engagement ring. I was planning to give it to your mother all of those years ago, but buckled. I've been saving it ever since. You didn't give it to Sophie? I was stunned. The ring must be worth a fortune. No, she had something else entirely. Go now, son, before Evie's heart breaks any more than it already has. The woman is stunning, you know. She truly is, inside and out. I ran and didn't look back. I'd sort out details later. For now, I wanted the woman who'd turned my life sideways long ago. I ran to the car and sped to Evie's apartment. I'd camp outside of her door if I had to. I banged on her door once I got there, impatient to end her pain, to tell her it was all a test. A stupid test, but still a test that we'd passed with flying colors. Evie, open the door, it's me. Go away, Henry. If he finds out you're here, I'll lose my girls. She sounded desperate to get rid of me. It was all a test, Evie. He was just testing us. Please let me in, princess. I winced at the endearment. I'd never used it with anyone but her, because she was the only woman worthy of it. Now I was about to make her a real princess. If she'd still have me after all of this my father might have ruined my chances. I'd make sure she got her daughters either way. I don't believe you, Henry. Go away. I heard the last word turn into a sob, and my heart twisted. Evie, baby, please. I swear. Look. Look through your spy hole. This is the ring my family uses as their official engagement ring. It's for you, Evie. Edwin gave it to me. I held the ring up, box open for her to see. I heard her gasp through the thin door. That's not real, Henry. It's so gaudy. I know, right? I'll find you another one, but for now, please open the door, Evie. Let me in, baby. I don't know. But the door opened. Her face was streaked with tears again, but I swore it would be the last time those eyes cried from sadness if I could help it. Will you marry me? I'd planned on waiting another week or two, but as soon as I opened my mouth, the words came out. My daughters? She looked so lost. I want them in my life, Henry. I won't have them ostracized. I'll have my father pass a decree. He's already said they'll be made princesses. And we won't be sneered at? I'll put anybody that does up on a pike. I groused the words out, but I wouldn't really. And we'll not have to deal with Aaron or his wife. I knew she hated the woman who'd taken her place. Never. Mommy. I heard the squeal of little girl voices and turned around. 2 identical blonde-haired, blue-eyed little girls ran down the hall and straight at Evie. Her daughters. I've only ever seen them in pictures. Where have you been, Mommy? We've been worried sick. Precocious little things I could see. Violet, she said to the one that had spoken. Dahlia? Evie crushed the girls to her and began to sob. I looked down the hall to see my father turn a corner, a wave of his hand his only acknowledgement or goodbye. He was king. It was good to be king, I could see as I watched Evie.
Censored.
Her girls. Mommy, who's that man who looks like the king? The one called Dahlia asked. I could only tell because she had a purple spot on her nose from ice cream she hadn't yet cleaned away. This is my fiancé, girls. He's going to be your stepfather. She beamed up at me, the acceptance in her eyes. This was what she'd needed. This was the only way she'd be able to step forward. That I am. And if you'd be so kind, girls, I'd like to take you and your mommy for a ride to my house. Mommy doesn't live here anymore. I saw Evie's surprise and then her acceptance. There was no need for us to live separately. I'll send for your things later, Evie, if that's okay? It's perfect, Henry. It's all just so wonderfully, beautifully perfect. Mommy, where is Aruba? That's where Daddy's and other mommy bad lady is going. Other mommy bad lady? Evie asked with a laugh of delight. That's what we call her when she can't hear us. She didn't want to be our mommy except for when Daddy was looking. We didn't like her. Where were you, Mommy? That was Violet, the one without the purple dot of ice cream. I was going to be so lost when they washed their faces. Ah. Aruba is out in the ocean, baby, somewhere. Shall we go now? She grabbed her bag, and we left the apartment behind. I'm kind of sad to leave it. It was the first place that was totally mine, that I was free in. She gave me a sad smile, and took her children's hands. The future is already looking brighter, though. I don't think I'll miss it. We can keep it if you like, as a private place to you know. I wiggled my eyebrows at her, and she giggled. Maybe. She bit her lip and gave me that innocent look she knew drove me mad. We might need it later, when the girls are bigger. I'll keep that in mind. I gave her a wink, and we left the apartment behind. We had a much brighter future ahead of us, brighter than we'd both ever imagined. We had each other, that was the best part of all. We had each other, for now and always. The day was a blur of moments that would fast forward to a memory, that would then fast forward to another memory. Our wedding day had been perfect. Royal but perfect. There had been a carriage, a dress that was already going viral around the world for its splendor and beauty, and enough pictures had been taken to fill a library. Now it was all done, the dancing, the laughter, the cake. All done. Evie was officially my wife. Her daughters were princesses, as was she, and our wedding day had been beautiful. Her gown was so heavy, encrusted with gold seed pearls and diamonds, and the train so long, a foot for every year of her life, that she'd needed help to change when we'd left to go on our honeymoon. Now she was
Censored.
On the private beach beside me. A satellite phone was all that connected us to the world, and that was only for her daughters to call her on. We were totally alone, at last. The girls were so beautiful in their dresses. Evie sighed as she stared up the cloth covering the umbrella we rested under. Those were good choices, I agreed. The girls had truly been princess in tiny little ball gowns made just for them with tiaras of their very own. I loved the whole day. She was glad to be relaxed and on the beach. I could see it. I missed them already. She looked at me guiltily, but I understood. They're your babies, and you've only had them back 4 months, princess. 2 days is all I asked, and 2 days is all I expect. Then we head back. They adore you, Henry? She grinned at me, happy. Good, because I adore them. Imps that they are. There were always giggles and laughter when the girls were near, and I loved how relaxed Evie became around them. They were funny, bright young girls, and they all loved each other very much. I was just happy to be included. I was lost in memories, lost in her when she asked me something. I didn't hear it, I just kept my gaze on those eyes of hers. Henry. My wife held her hand out to me, waiting for my response. What? Sorry. You just take my breath away. You're simply beautiful, do you know that? I saw relief flood her face and felt my heart melt for her. I asked if you wanted lunch? She smiled and turned around to pull sandwiches out of a hamper. I pulled her close, and her legs straddled me as she bent her head to
Censored.
me with passion that still wasn't slaked. The sandwiches were forgotten. I picked her up and walked off the beach and to our bedroom in the bungalow a few feet away. Are you all right, princess? Do you want a drink? Something to eat? Setting her on the bed, I saw a woman happy with the world. An impish grin came onto her face, the affluent, as she looked back at me. I could use a shower if you want to give me a hand. Her right eyebrow crooked, a golden invitation if I've ever seen one. I settled over her and bent to
Censored.
her full lips. I want you just the way you are, Evie. I whispered the words against her lips as she spread her thighs and welcomed me in. I nestled outside of her heat, not ready to be inside of her yet. I needed to be more in control of myself, and her smell and the feel of her against me made that impossible.
This scene has been censored to provide a safe and enjoyable reading experience for everyone.
I'd planned to live my life alone without this kind of love. How stupid I'd been. I felt whole now, that emptiness gone from so long ago. Maybe one day my mother would get past her pain, maybe she and my father would get back together, but that wasn't what was on my mind right now. Right now, all I cared about was the woman who rode me into a screaming orgasm and took my thoughts away. She was my world now, and always would be. I love you, Evie, was my final cry before I pulsed up into her. I'd given myself to her completely. She'd won my dead heart and my dark soul and brought light and life to me. That's exactly what she'd get back. An eternity of love.
Thank you for reading. If you like this story, I think you'll enjoy my book. Get your copy of Winning Her now. About Summer Cooper. Thank you so much for reading. Without you, it wouldn't be possible for me to be a full-time author. I hope you enjoy reading my books as much as I do writing them. Besides, obviously, reading and writing, I also love cuddling my dogs, shouting at Alexa, being upside down, aka yoga, and driving my family cray-cray. Follow me on Facebook, Instagram, Goodreads, BookBub. Get in touch at hello@summercooper.com. www.summercooper.com. About Summer Cooper. Thank you so much for reading. Without you, it wouldn't be possible for me to be a full-time author. I hope you enjoy reading my books as much as I do writing them. Besides, obviously, reading and writing, I also love cuddling my dogs, shouting at Alexa, being upside down, aka yoga, and driving my family cray-cray. Follow me on Facebook, Instagram, Goodreads, BookBub. Get in touch at hello@summercooper.com. www.summercooper.com.